Hello, friends, and welcome to Coached by Tara, the podcast where Tara...
Hi, that's me.
...coaches me, hi, I'm Mike, on different things and such, and life. We learn about life here. Right now, we're actually covering the Twilight series of books, and we're on the first book, Twilight by Stephanie Meyer.
Mm-hmm.
And we are on chapter 15. I almost forgot what chapter we were on, 15, because last week we covered chapter 14, Mind Over Matter.
Yes, we did. And it was a wild time.
It was a wild time.
We talked about a lot of things.
I want everybody to know that I've received a letter of cease and desist from the camp of Mitchell Musso. I'm no longer allowed to talk about pursuing him in a manner to grab his butt because he did that to my girlfriend.
Sounds unfortunate,
a long time ago.
Honestly.
You know, I just want to avoid a lawsuit, and I don't want anybody to go like harass Mitchell Musso over this. Let's just leave this alone.
On the down low, he's like, please harass. Please do it for my sake.
Go
under my name.
Mitchell Musso. Anyway, we're covering chapter 15. Before we get to that, I'm going to recap chapter 14 for everybody because that's what we do on the show. So Mind Over Matter, basically what happened is they start driving home after the escapade in the meadow where Edward was shiny boy.
It's basically just a long discussion.
And it's basically just a big like lore dump.
It is a lore dump.
They take a big fat steamy lore dump on us. And Edward explains that he was born in 1901 in Chicago. And he was saved when he was 17 by... why can't I think of his name?
Carlisle.
Thank you.
I was like, what are you saying?
I couldn't think of his name. By Carlisle, because he was dying of this Spanish influenza. And then they gained all their little ragtag crew over time.
Ragtag
vampire crew over time, including Esme and Emmett. And Emmett was mauled by a bear and saved, and it was pointed out that I didn't realize that he liked to eat bears when he was mauled by a bear.
Wait, did you read that?
Yes.
I don't know if you were supposed to read that.
Maybe I wasn't.
That is in the spoilers.
Did I click the spoilers?
I think, right?
Was it?
Oh, no, it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Whew, oh my God. I almost got so mad at you.
Well, I was like, I don't remember clicking in the spoilers.
Oh, okay. I thought, for everyone that isn't a part of our Discord, I thought he went into our spoilers.
No. I don't do that.
Oh, okay. I know.
There are two channels on our Discord I don't click into, and that's that, and then the episode 100 one.
Oh, okay.
So I don't click. I have it muted. They don't even light up when there are new people talking them. They're just.
Oh, I was going to say I was kind of explaining it for people that are not a part of the Discord.
Yes,
but I'm
Tyler
glad
pointed that out, and I will say that you're right. I completely missed that. So, boom shakalaka.
It looks like a couple people said they didn't see that, like didn't know. It went over their head too. So
okay,
it's not only you. It was me too when I first read it. So
well, I'm an idiot. Anyway,
okay.
they just kind of have a big lore dump, and then she finds out that Edward watches her sleep.
That is true.
Pretty much every night.
That is also true.
And instead of being absolutely horrified,
she is aroused.
She's aroused by that, which is insane to me. Anyway.
Not to me, but it's fine.
They get to her house. He's there for a minute, but then Charlie comes home, so Edward vanishes. Charlie's kind of like, oh, why aren't you hanging out with boys? What are you doing on Saturday night? She's like, I'm just going to bed. So he kind of might think that she's like sneaking out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So then she goes upstairs and Edward's there again. And he basically spends the whole night with her and they talk about... maybe someday they could... maybe... do the thing that two consenting adults do. I'm not talking about vampire stuff. I'm talking about
human stuff.
Love making. Making love.
Oh my gosh, it's getting too...
They talk about that and he's like, no, I would literally destroy you with my penis.
That's not exactly what happened.
Yeah, it's kind of close. And then Tara did the Patrick meme to me, and then...
I think we're good. I think
that's
mostly.
it. He stays the night with her the whole night. She falls asleep, and that's how the chapter ends.
Yes.
So now we're moving on to chapter 15, which is called...
Chapter 15, The Cullens.
The Cullens. Oh. So my prediction is we're gonna maybe meet some of these vampire people a little more in depth.
Oh yeah. Any other predictions or no? No.
They're gonna be mad at Edward because he didn't come home.
Oh, okay. That's
because he stayed the night.
Okay.
Even though it sounds like it's what he does a lot.
Yeah. Like, all the time.
Like they probably know he was spending time with her and then he didn't come home.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a little different, I think. Tara, are you ready to bring me into the woods in the sunlight and then out into the meadow and show me your shiny, sparkly body?
Yes.
Which means to tell me about the next chapter of Twilight.
Yes, I think yes. Yep.
Okay,
sure.
we'll be right back.
Okay. Mike,
Yes, Tara?
are you ready to be coached?
Oh, I'm so ready. Coach me,
Okay.
please.
Chapter 15.
Coach me, mommy.
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Too far.
15, the Cullens. So she wakes up, obviously.
Right.
You can't just keep going. I mean, you could dream, I guess, or write about a dream, but
Right. She wakes up.
yeah, she wakes up. She doesn't
wakes
dream, from what I know.
She didn't
And-
explain the dream if she did.
Exactly. And she becomes aware, obviously, that she's like, oh my God, everything's coming back to me. And she's like, she looks over and he's like in the rocking chair in the corner of her room. And she's like,
She's
oh
a
my
rocking
God.
chair in the corner of her room.
Yeah. She's like, oh my God, Edward, you stayed. Like, yay. Like, and thinking that he would leave in the middle of the night, I
Right.
guess. And then she goes and like throws herself like into his lap across the room because
Wow,
she's just like so
she's-
excited.
She's gotten
They both have gotten a little what's the word?
they've thrown their inhibitions out the
Yes,
window, so
true.
to speak. She doesn't care about being quirky anymore.
Right. But then it says, in the instant that my thoughts caught up with my actions, I froze, shocked by my own uncontrolled enthusiasm. I stared up at him, afraid that I had crossed the line, but he laughed. And he's like, of course I stayed. Like, I told you I would stay, so I did. And she was like, I was sure it was a dream. And he was like, but you're not that creative. That's kind of like mean. He kind of roasted the frick out of her. Like,
Roasted.
freaking roasted. And then she's like, oh my God, what about Charlie? And he's like, oh, like he left already an hour ago. Like, so
she
we're by
slept
ourselves.
in.
Like, yeah, we're by ourselves. Like, it's all cool. It's all chill.
Walk around naked
No,
and eat lasagna.
simultaneously. What if you burned
Naked
yourself?
Lasagna? I mean, I'm not rubbing the lasagna all over my body. Or am I?
I was gonna say, I don't know about for if it were you, maybe because you love lasagna.
Yeah. It depends if it's a Monday or not. I also hate Mondays.
Garfield.
I'm sorry, who?
Nobody. And she is like looking like she's like all confused. Like she realized like she's just like trying to catch up, you know?
Mhm.
And he's like, you're not usually like so confused in the morning. And like, cause he sees her at school and
Mhm.
she's like, well, I need another human minute. And she like goes in and brushes her teeth and splashes water on her face. And
Takes a poop.
no, maybe it doesn't say though.
She probably dropped the juice.
She probably pooped.
She ate lasagna the night before. She probably dropped
She probably pooped.
Yeah.
And while she like when she comes back, she's like, "Oh, you did leave," because he's wearing new clothes, and he's like, "I can hardly leave in the clothes I came in. What would the neighbors think?" So he went home at some point in the night to change because I feel like that's probably a good idea because that is kind of weird.
It's a little weird, but it's also like...
Also, why would you want to wear the same clothes all day, every day for eternity?
I feel like
because he
should be able
could.
just to snap his fingers and he has different clothes on, though. He's a vampire.
No, he just ran home, ran back. And he said, like, you know, you were deeply asleep and I don't think I missed anything. And she was like, oh, and he says the talking came earlier. And it says, I groaned. What did you hear? His gold eyes grew very soft. You said you loved me. You knew that You knew that already, I reminded him,
What?
ducking my head. So, like, she said, like, you knew that already.
Right.
And he said, it was nice to hear just the same. I hid my face against his shoulder. I love you, I whispered.
Edward.
You are my life now, he answered simply.
Edward, I love you. Edward.
There was nothing more to say for the moment. He rocked us back and forth as the room grew lighter because she was sitting with him. And then he's like, okay, like now it's time, like you got to eat breakfast now. And she's like, and she like tries to joke with him and she clutches her throat with her hands and is like, ah, like trying to be horrified. Pretending to be horrified.
He's going to eat breakfast.
Yeah, he's like, oh, it's breakfast time. And he like is freaked out by the fact that she was like, oh my God, like, because she was like pretending to be freaked out. And she was like, just kidding. And you said I couldn't act because like he got freaked out. And he's like, that wasn't funny.
Got his ass.
Got him.
Got him.
And he said, shall I rephrase? Breakfast time for the human. And she's like, oh, okay. So they're just having like normal banter, if you will, I feel like.
What'd she have for breakfast, does it say?
Yeah, so then they head downstairs and he's like...
This is very important to me.
He's like, what's for breakfast? And, or she asks him, what's for breakfast? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know.
I eat deer. Dude.
Right, exactly. And he's like, I'm not sure. What would you like? And she's like, that's all right. I fend for myself pretty well. Watch me hunt. And she goes and gets a bowl and a box of cereal. So she's eating cereal for breakfast.
Lame breakfast.
What? I love cereal.
I love cereal, but here's the thing. If I'm going to make breakfast, I'm making breakfast.
Yeah, but I think
Eggs,
she just wants to get on with her day.
Sausage, some sort of pancake or French toast or waffle action, maybe some potatoes.
I love breakfast.
I know you do. I do too.
I could eat breakfast for every meal.
So I'm going to make the vampire way, and I'm cooking myself a 5-star breakfast.
Well, he's like, I don't know what do you want to eat? You know?
And she probably had like Frosted Flakes or some garbage cereal.
I don't
like
remember
that.
what it is in the movie.
Raisin Bran.
I don't even know if
Raisin
the
Bran's
scene
good.
happens in the movie. I can't remember at this moment, but someone will probably correct me. And she's like, can I get you anything? And he just rolls his eyes because she's like, oh, sorry.
What about a blood orange?
Anyways. And she asks, what's on the agenda today? And he says, what would you say to meeting my family?
What? It's so soon.
I gulped. Are you? They just said I love you to each other.
It's so soon. It's so fast.
Everything's accelerated now. So it was very slow, and now it's very fast.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna meet the parents.
Yes.
What is Carlisle gonna think of her?
He says, "Are you afraid now?" He sounded hopeful. Yes, I admitted. How could I deny it? He could see it in my eyes. Don't worry, he smirked. I'll protect you. I'm not afraid of them, I explained. I'm afraid they won't like me. Won't they be, well, surprised that you would bring someone like me home to meet them? Do they know that I know about them? Oh, they already know everything. They'd taken bets yesterday, you know, he smiled. But his voice was harsh. On whether I'd bring you back, though why anyone would bet against Alice, I can't imagine. At any rate, we don't have any secrets in this family. It's not really feasible, what with my mind reading and Alice seeing the future and all that.
That makes sense.
And Jasper making you feel all warm and fuzzy about spilling your guts. Don't forget that. You paid attention, he smiled approvingly. I've been known to do that every now and then, I grimaced. So did Alice see me coming?
So
She means
coming.
like coming into his life.
Right.
His reaction was strange. Something like that, he said uncomfortably, turning away so I couldn't see his eyes. I stared at him curiously. Is that any good? He asked, turning back to me abruptly and eyeing my breakfast with a teasing look on his face. Honestly, it doesn't look very appetizing. Well, it's no irritable grizzly, I murmured, ignoring him when he glowered. I was still wondering why he responded that way when I mentioned Alice. I hurried through my cereal, speculating. She finishes, you know, and he's like, and I think you should introduce me to your father, too. He already knows you, I reminded him. As your boyfriend, I mean. I stared at him with suspicion. Why? Isn't that customary? He asked innocently. I don't know, I admitted. My dating history gave me few reference points to work with. Not that any normal rules of dating applied here. That's not necessary, you know. I don't expect you to. I mean, you don't have to pretend for me. His smile was patient. I'm not pretending. I pushed the remains of my... Oh, she wasn't finished eating her cereal. My bad. Are you going to tell Charlie I'm your boyfriend or not? He demanded. Is that what you are? I suppressed my internal cringing at the thought of Edward and Charlie and the word boyfriend all in the same room at the same time. It's a loose interpretation of the word boy, I'll admit. I was under the impression
that...
This
is my 100-year-old man friend.
What?
This is my 100-year-old man friend.
This is
my 100-year-old vampire friend.
Thank you for your time. This is it.
This is him. He's 100 years old and he's a vampire.
And
we're getting married.
She says, I was under the impression that you were something more, actually, I confessed, looking at the table. Well, I don't know if we need to give him all the gory details. He reached across the table to lift my chin with a cold, gentle finger. But he will need some explanation for why I'm around here so much. I don't want Chief Swan getting a restraining order put on me. Will you be? I asked, suddenly anxious. Will you really be here? As long as you want me, he assured me. I'll always want you, I warned him, forever. He walked slowly. What?
She's kind of scary, too. They're both kind of scary.
They're both a little bit scary.
They're both kind of scary to me.
He walked slowly around the table, and pausing a few feet away, he reached out to touch his fingertips to my cheek. His expression was unfathomable. I can't say that word ever.
Unfathomable.
Yes, thank you. Does that make you sad? I asked. He didn't answer. He stared into my eyes for an immeasurable period of time. Are you finished? He finally asked. I jumped up. Yes. Get dressed. I'll wait here. It was hard to... Okay, this is so funny because this part of the book is like such a meme, like to everyone.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to read it and I'll tell you why.
Okay, I'm waiting.
It was hard to decide what to wear. I doubted there were any etiquette books detailing how to dress when your vampire sweetheart takes you home to meet his vampire family. It was a relief to think the word to myself. I knew I shied away from it intentionally. I ended up in my only skirt, long, khaki-colored, still casual. I put on a dark blue blouse he'd once complimented. A quick glance in the mirror told me my hair was entirely impossible, so I pulled it back into a ponytail. Okay, I bounced down the stairs. I'm decent. He was waiting at the foot of the stairs, closer than I thought, and I bounded right into him. He steadied me, holding me a careful distance away for a few seconds before suddenly pulling me closer. Wrong again, he murmured in my ear. You are utterly indecent. No one should look so tempting. It's not fair. Tempting how? I asked. I can change. He sighed, shaking his head. You are so absurd. He pressed his cool lips delicately to my forehead and the room spun. The smell of his breath made it impossible to think. Shall I explain how you are tempting me? He said. It was clearly a rhetorical question. His fingers traced slowly down my spine, his breath coming more quickly against my skin. My hands were limp on his chest, and I felt lightheaded again. He tilted his head slowly and touched his cool lips to mine for the second time, very carefully, parting them slightly. And then I collapsed. Bella? His voice was alarmed as he caught me and held me up. You made me faint, I accused at him dizzily. What am I going to do with you? He groaned in exasperation. Yesterday I kiss you and you attack me. Today I do and you pass out on me. I laughed weakly, letting his arms support me while my head spun. So much for being good at everything, he sighed. That's the problem. I was still dizzy. You're too good. Far, far too good. Do you feel sick? He asked. He'd seen me like this before. No, that wasn't the same kind of fainting at all. I don't know what happened. I shook my head apologetically. I think I forgot to breathe. I can't take you anywhere like this. I'm fine, I insisted. Your family is going to think I'm insane anyways, so what's the difference? He measured my expression for a moment. I'm very partial to that color with your skin, he offered unexpectedly. I flushed with pleasure and looked away. So I need to explain why that is such a meme. I see this discussion all the time on things because she describes like this very plain like look. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, you are utterly indecent.
Right. So
like people make fun of that all the fucking time because I'll show you what she wears.
In the movie?
Yeah. I don't know if she wears it in the movie, but let me remember.
Yeah, it didn't sound
she doesn't wear it in the movie, if I remember. But this is like what they envision. Look at this meme. It says Bella khaki skirt long, Edward nut button.
Right. Yeah, that I
think
when
the
she
point
described it, it was like one of those skirts that like people that there's that religion where they're not allowed to wear pants. Women aren't allowed to wear pants.
That's what you
they wear
think
those
of.
like long khaki skirts to school.
So it's really funny because like I think that's what we all think of when we initially read it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what she was trying to portray was like the fact that he complimented that shirt on her before, or like he mentioned how he liked it before when they were at that Italian restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was trying to get at that, but also I think she was trying to describe something that's more like this. Like a mid-length skirt, so it's not like all the way down.
Yeah,
and then not like just thin straight
nut.
like Edward nut. So yeah, I just had to tell you
that's funny.
That was that meme because it's like something that's like literally pointed out all the time.
Is
like
that she dressed like a Mormon,
and he was like oh,
nut. Oh,
yeah.
You're entirely indecent.
Yeah, like that exactly. Yeah.
That's funny. Thank you for adding that context.
You're welcome. So then they are heading to the house, and she's like, I'm trying really hard not to think about what I'm about to do, so can we just go already? And he's like, and you're worried not because you're headed to meet a house full of vampires, but because you think those vampires won't approve of you, correct? And she's like, that's right. He shook his head. You're incredible. So then they drive. He drives her truck like over there, and they live like outside of Forks, and they're like in the forest or whatever. And she's like, I don't even know where we are. Like she was trying to decide. It says I was trying to decide whether to ask her to be patient on like where the house is, but when he turned abruptly onto an unpaved road, so it was like an unmarked unpaved road that they would live on. The forest encroached on both sides, leaving the road ahead only discernible for a few meters as it twisted serpent-like around ancient trees. And then after a few miles, there was a thinning of woods, and we were suddenly in a small meadow, or was it actually a lawn? The gloom of the forest didn't relent, though, and there were 6 primordial cedars that shaded an entire acre with their vast sweep of branches. The trees held their protecting shadow right up to the walls of the house that rose among them, making obsolete the deep porch that wrapped around the first story. I don't know what I had expected, but it definitely wasn't this. The house was timeless, graceful, and probably 100 years old. It was painted a soft, faded white, 3 stories tall, rectangular, and well-proportioned. The windows and doors were either part of the original structure or a perfect restoration. My truck was the only car in sight. I could hear a river close by, hidden in the obscurity of the forest. So she was, like, super impressed by their house.
Right.
It's funny because I'm reading this and I'm like, oh, I don't like the house in the book or in the movie like doesn't remind me of like the description, but kind of, I guess. So then, they gotta go inside and she's super nervous and he's like, you look lovely. And he opened the door for her. The inside was even more surprising, less predictable than the exterior. It was very bright, very open, and very large. This must have originally been several rooms, but the walls had been removed from most of the first floor to create one wide open space. The back south-facing wall had been replaced with entirely with glass, and beyond the shade of the cedars, the lawn stretched bare to the wide river. A massive staircase dominated the west side of the room. The walls, the high-beam ceiling, the wooden floors, and the thick carpets were all varying shades of white, so very bougie.
Mm-hmm.
Very bougie indeed.
Very, I'm assuming Esme was in charge of this.
Yes, for sure. Waiting to greet us, standing just to the left of the door, on a raised portion of the floor by a spectacular grand piano, were Edward's parents. I'd seen Dr. Cullen before, of course, yet I couldn't help but be struck by his youth again, and his outrageous perfection. At his side was Esme, I assumed, the only one of the family I'd never seen before. She had the same pale, beautiful features as the rest of them. Something about her heart-shaped face, her billows of soft, caramel-colored hair, reminded me of the ingenues of the... Ingenues? Ingenues? Is that how you say it?
I don't know what that is.
Of the silent movie era.
Ingenues? I don't know what that means. Ingenues?
She was small, slender, yet less angular, more rounded than the others. They were both dressed casually in light colors that matched the inside of the house. They smiled in welcome, but made no move to approach us, trying not to frighten me, I guessed. Carlisle, Esme, Edward's voice broke the silence. This is Bella. You're very welcome here, Bella. Carlisle's step was measured, careful as he approached me. He raised his hand tentatively, and I stepped forward to shake hands with him. It's nice to see you again, Dr. Cullen. Please, call me Carlisle. Carlisle, I grinned at him, my sudden confidence surprising me. I could feel Edward's relief at my side. Esme smiled and stepped forward as well, reaching for my hand. Her cold stone grasp was just as I expected. It's very nice to know you, she said sincerely. Thank you, I'm glad to meet you too. And I was. It was like meeting a fairy tale, Snow White in the flesh. She's just supposed to, come across as like a very warm person.
Yes. Yes.
She shows, she's very good at giving compassion, loving compassionately, I should say.
Yes.
Where are Alice and Jasper? Edward asked, but no one answered, as they had just appeared at the top of the wide staircase. Hey, Edward, Alice called enthusiastically. She ran down the stairs, a streak of black hair and white skin, coming to a sudden and graceful stop in front of me. Carlisle and Esme shot warning glances at her, but I liked it. It was natural for her anyway. Hi, Bella, Alice said, and she bounced forward to kiss my cheek. If Carlisle and Esme had looked cautious before, they now looked staggered. There was shock in my eyes, too, but I was also very pleased that she seemed to approve of me so entirely. I was startled to feel Edward stiffen at my side. I glanced at his face, but his expression was unreadable. You do smell nice. I never noticed before, she commended, to my extreme embarrassment. No one else seemed to know quite what to say, and then Jasper was there, tall and there's words in here that I've never read out loud.
What
I
is
guess
it?
Leonine.
How do you spell it?
Leonin.
Leonin.
Like leonine.
Yeah, I don't know what that word is either.
A feeling of ease spread through me, and I was suddenly comfortable despite where I was, because he affected the emotions in the room.
Yes.
Edward stared at Jasper, raising one eyebrow, and I remembered what Jasper could do. Hello, Bella, Jasper said. He kept his distance, though, not offering to shake my hand, but it was impossible to feel awkward near him. Hello, Jasper, I smiled at him shyly, and then at the others. It's nice to meet you all. You have a very beautiful home. Thank you, Esme said. We're so glad that you came. She spoke with feeling, and I realized that she thought I was brave. I also realized that Rosalie and Emmett were nowhere to be seen, and I remembered Edward's too innocent denial when I'd asked him if the others didn't like me. Carlisle's expression distracted me from this train of thought. He was gazing meaningfully at Edward with an intense expression. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Edward nod once, because Carlisle can just think things and Edward can hear them.
Right.
I looked away, trying to be polite. My eyes wandered again to the beautiful instrument on the platform by the door, so she just notices the grand piano,
Mm-hmm.
And she always remembered that if she wanted her mom to buy, if she ever won the lottery, she had always wanted to buy a grand piano for her mom.
Oh, okay.
Her mom wasn't good. Like, she just played like for
Chopsticks.
herself, but she loved to watch her play, and she was happy doing it. But then Esme notices that she is like kind of looking over there, and she's like, "Do you play?" And she's like, "No, not at all. Like, is it yours?" And she was like, "No, Edward didn't tell you he was musical." And she was like, "No."
Oh, Edward.
I glared at his suddenly innocent expression with narrowed eyes. I should have known, I guess. Esme raised her eyebrows in confusion. Edward can do everything, right? I explained. Jasper snickered, and Esme gave Edward a reproving look. I hope you haven't been showing off. It's rude, she scolded. Just a bit, he laughed freely. Her face softened at the sound, and they shared a brief look that I didn't understand, though Esme's face seemed almost smug. He's been too modest, actually, I corrected. Well, play for her, Esme encouraged. You just said showing off was rude, he objected. There are exceptions to every rule, she replied. I'd like to hear you play, I volunteered. It's settled then. Esme pushed him toward the piano. He pulled me along, sitting on the bench beside him. He gave me a long, exasperated look before he turned to the keys. And then, His fingers flowed swiftly across the ivory, and the room was filled with a composition so complex, so luxuriant, it was impossible to believe only one set of hands played. I felt my chin drop, my mouth open in astonishment, and heard low chuckles behind me at my reaction. Edward looked at me casually, the music still surging around us without a break, and winked. Do you like it? You wrote this, I guessed, understanding. He nodded. It's Esme's favorite. I closed my eyes, shaking my head. What's wrong? I'm feeling extremely insignificant. The music slowed, transforming into something softer, and to my surprise, I detected the melody of his lullaby weaving through the profusion of notes. You inspired this one, he said softly. The music grew unbearably sweet. I couldn't speak. They like you, you know, he said conversationally, Esme especially. I glanced behind me, but the room was empty now. Where'd they go? They were very subtly giving us some privacy, I suppose. I sighed. They like me. But Rosalie and Emmett? I trailed off.
Never good enough for Bella.
Don't worry about Rosalie. She'll come around. Emmett? Well, he thinks I'm a lunatic, it's true, but he doesn't have a problem with you. He's trying to reason with Rosalie. What is it that upsets her? I wasn't sure if I wanted to know the answer. He sighed deeply. Rosalie struggles the most with what we are. It's hard for her to have someone on the outside know the truth. And she's a little jealous. Rosalie is jealous of me? I asked incredulously. I tried to imagine a universe in which someone as breathtaking as Rosalie would have any possible reason to feel jealous of someone like me. You're human, he shrugged. She wishes that she were too. So then, she's like, okay, well, like, even Jasper, and he's like, well, that's like really my fault that he stays away because I told you he's the most recent person,
right,
vampire,
right,
to try our way of life, and I warned him to keep his distance because like he didn't think that he'd be strong enough, you know. And she's like, well, okay, then Esme and Carlisle, and he's like, they're just happy to see me happy. And he says, actually, Esme wouldn't care if you had a third eye and webbed feet. All this time she's been worried about me, afraid that there was something missing from my essential makeup, that I was too young when Carlisle changed me. She's ecstatic. Every time I touch you, she just about chokes with satisfaction. So she's just happy like he found someone, you know?
Yeah.
And she says, Alice seems very enthusiastic. And he says, Alice has her own way of looking at things, he said through tight lips. And you're not going to explain that, are you? A moment of wordless communication passed between us. He realized that I knew he was keeping something from me. I realized that he wasn't going to give anything away. Not now. So what was Carlisle telling you before? His eyebrows pulled together. You noticed that? I just shrugged. Of course. He wanted to tell me some news, but he didn't know if it was something I would share with you. Will you? I have to because I'm going to be a little overbearingly protective over the next few days or weeks, and I wouldn't want you to think I'm naturally a tyrant. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong exactly. Alice just sees some visitors coming soon. They know we're here, and they're curious. Visitors? Yes. Well, they aren't like us, of course, in their hunting habits, I mean. They probably won't come into town at all, but I'm certainly not going to let you out of my sight till they're gone. I shivered. Finally, a rational response, he murmured. I was beginning to think you had no sense of self-preservation at all. I let that one pass, looking away, my eyes wandering around the spacious room. He followed my gaze. Not what you expected, is it? Like, about the house. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, there's no skulls in the corners. There's no there's no cobwebs, like, you know, there's scary stuff.
Iron Maidens.
Right.
Coffins.
He's like, yeah, it's like really light and open. And he says seriously, it's the one place we never have to hide.
Wow.
He finishes playing the song, and she's like realizes that she's like crying. Like from the song, or like there are tears in her eyes from the song.
She's crying.
I forgot that this was in here. You're gonna think it's so weird.
Okay, all right.
He touched the corner of my eye, trapping a tear I had missed. He lifted his finger, examining the drop of moisture broodingly. Then, so quickly I couldn't be positive that he really did it, he put his finger to his mouth to taste it. So he tasted her tears. And there's like no explanation for why he did it. It just says, I looked at him questioningly and he gazed back for a long moment before he finally smiled. Do you want to see the rest of the house? I don't know why they added that in there. I think it's just like a weird, quirky thing.
Yeah, does he not cry?
No, I don't think he secretes tears.
But he would have before he became a vampire.
Yeah, but he doesn't remember those memories.
Yeah.
He doesn't really remember his human memories.
I get that. I'm trying to justify it. Like,
I don't know if there is a justification this time.
Because like he's obviously seen movies and stuff where people cry.
Right. Oh, I mean, I don't know what it was.
So it's not like he doesn't know what crying is. Because that would make more sense if he didn't know, and then he was like, what's going on here? But no, he just ate a tear.
Yep. Just
a little cringe, Edward. A little cringe, buddy.
Yeah, just a bit. And she's like, okay, there's no coffins in the rest of the house. And he's like, ha 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 ha, no.
Where's Frankenstein?
And then, yeah, where's Frankenstein? They head up the staircase and he's like, oh, this is Rosalind Emmett's room. This is Carlisle's office, Alice's room. And then at the end of the hall, she like stares at this like big hanging on the wall above her head. And he's like, you can laugh. It is sort of ironic. And it's like a large wooden cross. And she says, well, it must be very old. And he says, early 1630s, more or less. I looked away from the cross to stare at him. Why do you keep this here? I wondered. Nostalgia. It belonged to Carlisle's father. He collected antiques, I suggested doubtfully. No, he carved this himself. It hung on the wall above the pulpit in the vicarage where he preached. I wasn't sure if my face betrayed my shock, but I returned to gazing at the simple ancient cross just in case. I quickly did the mental math. The cross was over 370 years old. The silence stretched on as I struggled to wrap my mind around the concept of so many years. Are you all right? He sounded worried. How old is Carlisle? I asked quietly, ignoring his question, still staring up. He just celebrated his 362nd birthday.
Heck yeah.
Edward said. I looked back at him, a million questions in my head. He watched me carefully as he spoke. Carlisle was born in London in the 1640s, he believes. Time wasn't marked as accurately then, for the common people anyway. It was just before Cromwell's rule, though. I kept my face composed, aware of his scrutiny as I listened. It was easier if I didn't try to believe. He was the only son of an Anglican pastor. His mother died giving birth to him. His father was an intolerant man. As the Protestants came into power, he was enthusiastic in his persecution of Roman Catholics and other religions. He also believed very strongly in the reality of evil. He led hunts for witches, werewolves, and vampires. I grew very still at the word. I'm sure he noticed, but he went on without pausing. They burned a lot of innocent people. Of course, the real creatures that he saw were not so easy to catch. When the pastor grew old, he placed his obedient son in charge of the raids. At first, Carlisle was a disappointment. He was not quick to accuse, to see demons where they did not exist. But he was persistent and more clever than his father. He actually discovered a coven of true vampires that lived hidden in the sewers of the city, only coming out by night to hunt. In those days, when monsters were not just myths and legends, that was the way many of them lived. The people gathered their pitchforks and torches, of course. His brief laugh was darker now, and waited where Carlisle had seen the monsters exit into the street. Eventually, one emerged. His voice was very quiet. I strained to catch the words. He must have been ancient and weak with hunger. Carlisle heard him call out in Latin to others when he caught scent of the mob. He ran through the streets, and Carlisle, he was 23 and very fast, was in the lead of the pursuit. The creature could have easily outrun them, but Carlisle thinks he was too hungry, so instead he turned and attacked. He fell on Carlisle first, but the others were close behind, and he turned to defend himself. He killed 2 men and made off with a third, leaving Carlisle bleeding in the street. He paused. I could sense he was editing something, keeping something from me. Carlisle knew what his father would do. The bodies would be burned, and anything infected by the monster must be destroyed. Carlisle acted instinctively to save his own life. He crawled away from the alley while the mob followed the fiend and his victim. He hid in a cellar, buried himself in rotting potatoes for 3 days. It's a miracle he was able to keep silent while changing, to stay undiscovered. It was over then, and he realized what he had become. So, that's all I know. That's a lot.
No, that's
So,
the origin story of Carlisle.
I was going to say, so it's really crazy. I mean, and there's still more for me to say, but it's really crazy that they have this all out there because it's none of this is in the movie. Not a single second of it.
That makes sense.
I mean,
people in movies don't always care about that kind of backstory, you know.
And
in a book, it's
it
more
makes
important.
sense. It just is like it gives them like more of a depth. Like I feel like in the movies, there's like not a lot, especially the first one. There's like no depth to them.
Yeah.
They're there, you know.
And a lot of times in movies, like you can just infer, like you don't need to be told.
Yeah, exactly.
Where a book, like everything that you're seeing in your head visually is inferred from the words, right?
Right.
Where like you could see Carlisle in the movie possibly and go, okay, this guy's been around a while. This guy got turned.
And you kind of do just because he's so like graceful in a sense, and he's very wise. So you kind of know. But he looks 23. Like he looks young. So. Or he's supposed to. I think he looks like that, but
yeah, he from the pictures I've seen of him, he definitely looks older than 23 in the movie, but I think that's okay.
Yeah, I think so too.
Side note, when they were talking about the cross, I'm so used to like really stupid bullshit and stories because like some of the media I follow. And I was like, wait, they're not gonna say that's like Jesus's cross or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, like no, that's the cross. Jesus.
Well, they're saying like that they were religious like back then, because his father was a pastor.
Right, but I thought they were gonna like say, oh, this is the cross Jesus was hung on, and I was just like, oh my god. But I'm glad that's not what happened.
Didn't take like a mighty like West Michigan turn. Like that's such a West Michigan thing, like to have a big cross in your house.
Yes, it is. It is.
Like a Bible Belt type of thing. Midwest, I should say.
I'm glad it wasn't cheesy.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
It had a lot of meaning. I'm not sure what my face was revealing, but he suddenly broke off. How are you feeling? He asked. I'm fine, I assured him, and though I bit my lip in hesitation, he must have seen the curiosity burning in my eyes. He smiled. I expect you to have a few more questions for me? Just a few. His smile widened over his brilliant teeth. He started back down the hall, pulling me along by the hand. Come on, then, he encouraged. I'll show you. And that's the end of the chapter.
Oh, what?
Yes.
Oh.
I know.
Show me what, Edward?
I know.
Your wiener?
No.
Oh, not what he meant. Okay.
But maybe his room.
Interesting.
Eventually.
Interesting. So that was chapter 15.
Chapter 15. Meeting the Cullens, basically. It is called just the Cullens.
The Cullens.
It was basically meet the parents.
Yeah, we kind of just barely met them, though. We didn't really get a whole lot of info on them. That's very interesting. Very interesting. We're getting a lot of lore dumped on us these last 2 chapters.
We are definitely getting a lot of Cullen lore.
It's interesting.
And basically the whole next chapter is a lore chapter, to be honest with you.
I believe it. What's funny is
it's a deep lore too. The whole next chapter is entirely not in the movie.
Oh wow. Okay.
It's one of those.
What I was gonna say is it's interesting how she'll ask a question and he'll give an answer that's not necessarily cryptic, but it's not telling the whole answer. And then she goes, "Huh, he definitely didn't tell me everything," and then moves on because she doesn't like her character doesn't want to make a sticking point of it. You know what I mean? But really, it's just like the author's trying to save more mystery for later, you know?
Oh, it's for sure.
That happens a lot, I've realized in this book, where she's like, what about Rosalie?
It's true, and
she's like, Rosalie's jealous. And she's like, well, how could Rosalie be jealous? I thought about it for a while and then moved on. And it's like, no, ask why Rosalie's jealous, Bella.
But then it's like, it kind of flows. I mean, I'm reading it differently, but I think it flows in the sense that, like, she's so wrapped up in other things that are going on
Right,
that she
I get
doesn't
that
have time to think about
and that's
it.
I don't think
And
that's
she'll dwell on it later.
I don't think it's a terrible story conceit. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's
just clear, yeah.
It's clear to me that like
But what's really interesting to me is some of the things that you don't know what he's thinking aren't even really revealed like in the next books, but they were to me in Midnight Sun.
Right.
So that's why I think it's so interesting that she has
almost like she knew she was going to write this other book at some point.
Well, she did.
Right.
Did you know that?
No, well, why would I know that?
Because she wrote that book. I believe someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but either in tandem with Twilight or just after she released Twilight, and it was leaked in 2008.
Oh. And
it was like the first 4 chapters that were leaked. And because of that, she decided not to release it. So because I'm assuming she was pissed or it didn't receive a good outcome at first. Back then? I didn't. That's I don't think I did because I don't remember hearing much about it. But I also wasn't super present in social media in 2008. Right. So if it was a social media thing, I wouldn't have known. Right. I don't think social media was very present. It wasn't really. I mean, it would. I mean, what am I gonna do? See it on MySpace? Maybe. I don't know. I feel like it wasn't really a news source. It was
Stephanie
just
Meyer.
For me, it was just music and stuff.
Leaks.
But I do remember reading it a few years after that, and I was like, oh man, why wasn't it something that was finished? There was a ton of people after she completed this whole series, there were a ton of people that were like, this needs to be finished. Please, this is crazy, Meyer. And it died out after the years, and so it was. I think it was a pretty big thing, when she was like, I finally finished it, it's coming out, and she did that because it's
kind of smart on her part.
Oh yeah,
you wait
100%.
Because I think if she would have released it when the movies were a thing, the people even when the movies were a big deal, there were a ton of people that were like, this is cringy bullshit. The movies suck.
Exactly. And I think that
she waited for people to be more nostalgic about it.
Exactly. And she released this thing about how people have been super nostalgic about it and how she felt more comfortable releasing it at this time. I'm pretty sure I'd have to look at the article again, but
no, smart.
I think it's really great because it brings about, first of all, something like this podcast, but also it just brings up the discussion of the characters again. And you really get to see his side and his thoughts where sometimes you don't know what he's doing with all his free time. And you don't know what he's thinking. And he never sleeps. So
right.
I just thought I think it's just a very
Imagine if you didn't have to sleep. You know how much shit you would get done?
I know.
Or how much time you would just waste watching nothing.
Right. I mean, imagine because she was surprised that he was musically inclined, but wouldn't you just get so bored you'd want to do something?
Yeah, I'd hope that if I didn't have to sleep, I would make it energy that was
oh my god,
useful.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I know.
I don't know that I would.
I feel like I would because I go nuts just sitting by myself doing nothing.
Right. Tara would play 12 instruments and.
Yeah, I probably
know
would.
20 languages. And
I would probably learn languages. I really have wanted to do that, but I never feel like I could do it. But
I get the feeling, my hypothesis on all this is if you didn't have to sleep, somehow you would still feel like you didn't have enough time to do everything you wanted.
That's
to do.
True.
Not just you. I mean, in general.
Yeah.
I just think that's the human condition.
I think so too. I think so too. They kind of make it seem like it's just this burden almost, but I guess 600 years, that's a really long time, but
yeah,
maybe your first 100 are Edward, where he's I've done everything, you know,
right.
But I don't know.
Interesting to think about.
Yes.
Anyway, Tara, thank you so much for coaching me.
You are welcome.
I enjoyed it thoroughly.
It was very fun, and I just like how we're getting into the deeper nitty gritty parts, the parts that I like, to recall because they're not necessarily in the movie. Because to me, the movie is so ankle high, it's very shallow.
Yeah. Watered down
For sure. It's literally just skimming the surface of the book. 100%. I in my opinion.
You're making me not want to watch the movie.
It's definitely, you need to watch it.
Do I?
Yes, because we're all watching it together.
I did find out, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we're only on chapter, 15?
Yeah, we have only like 10 or 13 chapters left.
But that's still,
that's for 13
weeks away.
Yeah.
But when we finish the book, we will be watching Twilight. I'm still exploring options, but I did find out that Twilight is on Amazon Prime, and it's eligible to be watched on Twitch. So the only thing you guys would need to watch it with us on Twitch is Amazon Prime or Prime Gaming.
Which is great.
Which, if you already have that service, it's great.
Or try the subscription for free if you wanted to do it.
Yeah, I think if they have a free trial of it, don't they?
They do.
Yeah. So don't do it yet.
Don't do the free trial.
Don't do it yet.
We have like 13 weeks before that.
We have 13 weeks, but when we get closer, we'll talk about it more.
Or maybe sooner.
But I think Twitch.
If we try to do more episodes.
Yeah, I mean, we're struggling to get one out a week right now. I don't know if that's a. But so keep that in mind, folks. If you, we might be watching on Twitch because that would be a lot of fun. But anyway.
I think it would be just a really interesting time.
Maybe we'll watch something else to test it. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you next week. Tara, thank you again for coaching me.
You're welcome.
We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.